The Quiet Panic. Working at an abandoned amusement park sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, right? Well, for the past 8 months, it's been my reality. And trust me, the things I've experienced in this place will make you question everything you thought you knew about what happens when the lights go out and the crowds disappear. My name is Jake, and I'm a security guard at what used to be Wonderland Springs, a family amusement park that closed down 3 years ago after a series of accidents and financial troubles. The place sits on 47 acres of what was once pure childhood magic, but now it's just a graveyard of rusted rides and faded dreams. Most people assume places like this just sit empty, slowly rotting away until someone decides to tear them down. But that's not always the case. See, the property management company that owns this place hired me and 2 other guards to keep vandals and urban explorers from breaking in and getting themselves killed on the unstable structures. What they didn't tell me during the interview was just how much weird stuff happens here after dark. And I'm not talking about your typical homeless person setting up camp or teenagers trying to spray paint the carousel horses. I'm talking about things that have made me question my own sanity more times than I care to admit. Tonight, I'm finally ready to share 3 stories from my time at Wonderland Springs that will stick with me for the rest of my life. These aren't ghost stories or urban legends passed down through generations. These are real experiences that happened to me personally. And I've got the security footage and witness statements to prove it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why I sleep with my lights on now and why I'm seriously considering finding a new line of work. But before I dive into these stories, let me paint you a picture of what this place actually looks like. Wonderland Springs opened in 1987 and was designed to compete with the bigger theme parks about 2 hours south of us. It had all the classic attractions you'd expect. A wooden roller coaster called the Thunder Mountain Express, a Ferris wheel that stood nearly 200 feet tall, bumper cars, a haunted house, and this massive carousel with hand-carved horses that probably cost more than most people's cars. The park was actually pretty successful for about 20 years. Families would drive from 3 states away to spend their summers here. But then the accidents started happening. First, a kid fell off the tilt-a-whirl and broke his arm. Then someone got stuck upside down on the Thunder Mountain Express for 4 hours. The final nail in the coffin was when a section of the Ferris wheel broke away during a thunderstorm, sending 2 passenger cars crashing to the ground. Miraculously, nobody died, but the lawsuits that followed basically bankrupted the place overnight. So here I am, 3 years later, walking through what feels like a post-apocalyptic wasteland every single night. The rides are all still there, just frozen in time. Some of the game booths still have stuffed animals hanging from the ceiling, their fur matted and eyes staring blankly into the darkness. The smell is what gets you first, though. It's this mixture of rust, mold, and something sweet that I can never quite identify. Maybe it's the remnants of cotton candy machines or the syrup from old snow cone stands. Either way, it's not pleasant. My shift starts at 11 p.m. and runs until 7 in the morning. The other two guards, Marcus and Elena, work different sections of the park, so most nights I'm completely alone in my designated area, which includes the main midway, the kiddie rides, and the old funhouse. We communicate through walkie-talkies, but the reception is spotty at best because of all the metal structures interfering with the signal. The company gave me a golf cart to patrol the grounds, but honestly, I prefer walking most of the time. The cart makes too much noise, and in a place like this, you want to hear everything that's happening around you. Plus, the headlights on that thing create these weird shadows that play tricks on your mind. I've lost count of how many times I thought I saw someone moving between the rides, only to realize it was just my own shadow being cast in some bizarre angle. Now, you might be thinking this job sounds pretty easy. Just walk around for 8 hours, make sure nobody's breaking in, file a report at the end of your shift, and collect your paycheck. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what it was. I'd do my rounds, maybe chase off the occasional raccoon or stray cat, and spend the rest of the time scrolling through my phone in the security office, which is basically just a converted concession stand near the front gates. But then things started getting weird, and I mean really weird. It started small at first. I'd hear music playing from somewhere deep in the park, but when I'd go to investigate, it would stop the moment I got close. Or I'd see lights flickering in the funhouse, even though the power to that section had been shut off years ago. Marcus and Elena reported similar things, but we all just chalked it up to old electrical systems or maybe some kind of automated backup power that nobody told us about. The first time I knew something was seriously wrong was about 6 weeks into the job. I was doing my usual midnight patrol when I heard what sounded like children laughing coming from the direction of the kiddie rides. Not just 1 or 2 kids, but a whole group of them, like what you'd hear during the park's heyday when dozens of families would be enjoying the attractions. Now, I should mention that the kiddie section is completely fenced off from the rest of the park. The management company put up an 8-foot chain link barrier around it because some of those smaller rides had become structurally unsound, and they were worried about liability if someone got hurt. The only way in or out is through a locked gate, and I have the only key. But there I was, standing outside that fence at 12:30 in the morning, listening to what sounded like an entire elementary school having the time of their lives just 50 yards away from me. The laughter was so clear, so genuine, that for a moment I actually forgot where I was. It reminded me of being a kid myself, that pure joy you feel when you're spinning around on a merry-go-round or bumping into your friends in those tiny cars. I radioed Marcus and Elena to see if they were hearing anything unusual. But both of them were on the complete opposite side of the park and reported everything was quiet on their end. So I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the gate, thinking maybe some kids had somehow managed to sneak in and were messing around on the equipment. As I got closer to the fence, the laughter seemed to get louder and more excited, like whatever was happening was reaching some kind of peak. I could almost make out individual voices now. High-pitched squeals of delight mixed with the mechanical sounds of rides in operation. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. Those rides hadn't been operational in 3 years. The power had been completely disconnected, and most of the moving parts had been locked down or removed entirely. I reached the gate and fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking more than I care to admit. The laughter was so loud now it felt like it was coming from right on the other side of the fence. I could swear I heard the musical melody of the tiny carousel that used to be the centerpiece of the kiddie area. That cheerful tune that would play over and over again as the miniature horses went up and down. But the moment I got the gate open and stepped inside, everything went dead silent. Not just quiet, but completely unnaturally silent. No wind, no insects, no distant traffic sounds from the highway. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. I stood there in the entrance to the kiddie area, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating nothing but empty rides and overgrown weeds. The carousel sat motionless in the center of the area, its tiny horses frozen mid-gallop, their painted smiles looking more sinister than cheerful in the harsh LED light. The miniature roller coaster that used to thrill 5-year-olds snaked around the perimeter like a sleeping snake, its tracks covered in rust and debris. I spent the next 20 minutes searching every inch of that fenced-off section, looking for any sign that someone had been there. No footprints in the dirt, no disturbed vegetation, no evidence that a single person had set foot in that area in months, let alone a group of laughing children. But as I was getting ready to leave, convinced that my mind had been playing tricks on me, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The carousel was moving, not spinning like it would during normal operation, but rocking ever so slightly back and forth as if someone had just gotten off one of the horses. I stood there frozen, watching this massive piece of machinery that should have been completely motionless, swaying gently in the still night air. I called out, "Hello, is someone there?" My voice echoed off the empty rides, but no one answered. The carousel gradually came to a complete stop, and I convinced myself it must have been the wind or maybe some kind of settling from the old foundation. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. That was my first real encounter with whatever haunts this place, but it definitely wasn't my last. The second incident happened about a month later, and this time I wasn't alone. Elena was doing her rounds near the funhouse when her walkie crackled to life around 2 in the morning. She sounded panicked, which was completely out of character for her. Elena had been doing security work for 15 years and was normally the calmest person you'd ever meet. But that night her voice was shaking as she asked Marcus and me to come to her location immediately. We found her standing outside the funhouse entrance, her flashlight beam dancing nervously across the faded clown faces painted on the exterior walls. The place had always been creepy even when it was operational, with its tilted floors, maze of mirrors, and mechanical surprises designed to startle visitors. But seeing it now, with peeling paint and broken windows, it looked like something straight out of a nightmare. Elena explained that she'd been walking past the building when she heard what sounded like the automated voice track that used to play inside. You know, those pre-recorded messages that would welcome visitors and give them directions through the maze. She said it was crystal clear, like the attraction was fully operational and packed with customers. The 3 of us stood there listening, and sure enough, we could hear muffled sounds coming from inside the building. It wasn't just the old voice track, though. We could hear footsteps, people talking and laughing, and even what sounded like the pneumatic systems that used to power the jump scares. Marcus, being the skeptical type, suggested that maybe some homeless people had gotten inside and were using battery-powered speakers or something. It sounded ridiculous, but it was the only logical explanation we could come up with. So we decided to investigate. The front entrance to the funhouse had been boarded up, but there was a maintenance door around the back that we could access with our master key. As we made our way inside, our flashlight beams revealed a place that time had forgotten. The floors were covered in debris and standing water, and the mirrors that once confused and delighted visitors were now cracked and covered in mold. But here's the thing that still gives me chills. We could still hear all that activity, but it seemed to be coming from deeper inside the building. Always just around the next corner or through the next doorway. We'd follow the sounds, thinking we were getting closer, but they would always seem to move away from us like we were chasing an echo through a maze. We spent over an hour searching that building from top to bottom. We found no people, no speakers, no equipment of any kind that could have been producing those sounds. But the entire time we were in there, we could hear what sounded like a fully operational funhouse all around us. Voices, footsteps, mechanical noises, even the creaking of floorboards as invisible visitors made their way through the attraction. The weirdest part was when we reached the center of the maze, where there used to be this big rotating tunnel that people would have to walk through. The tunnel was still there, but it hadn't moved in years and was partially collapsed on one side. Yet as we stood there, we could hear it spinning, the same rhythmic whooshing sound it used to make when it was working. Elena actually started crying at that point, not from fear, but from this overwhelming sadness that seemed to fill the air. She said later that it felt like the building was mourning, like it was trying to recreate the joy it used to bring people but could only manage a hollow imitation. We left the funhouse that night more confused than when we went in. None of us could explain what we'd experienced, and we agreed not to report it to the management company. Who would believe us anyway? But the final incident, the one that really convinced me this place is something beyond normal, happened just 2 weeks ago. And this time I have security footage to back up my story. I was doing my usual patrol around 3 in the morning when I noticed something odd about the Ferris wheel. Now this thing had been completely shut down since the accident that killed the park. All the passenger cars had been removed and the wheel itself had been locked in place to prevent it from moving in high winds. But as I walked past it that night, I could swear I saw one of the cars still attached near the top. I grabbed my binoculars and sure enough, there was a single passenger car swaying gently about 150 feet in the air. The problem was, I'd walked past that same wheel just 2 hours earlier and it had been completely empty. I radioed Marcus and Elena, and both of them confirmed they could see it too from their positions. We all converged on the Ferris wheel, and that's when things got really weird. As we stood there looking up at this impossible passenger car, we started to hear music. Not the cheerful carnival music you'd expect, but something slow and melancholy, like a music box winding down. And then, clear as day, we saw the silhouette of a person sitting in that car. The figure appeared to be small, maybe a child, and they were just sitting there perfectly still, looking out over the abandoned park. We called out to them, thinking maybe somehow a kid had gotten stuck up there, but there was no response. Marcus suggested we call the fire department, but before any of us could reach for our phones, the car started to move. Not the whole wheel, just that one car swinging back and forth like someone was shifting their weight inside it. And then the music stopped, and the figure was gone. Just like that. The car was still there, still swaying slightly, but it was empty. We checked the security cameras the next morning, and sure enough, everything was captured on film. The timestamp shows the car appearing at 2:47 a.m., the figure showing up about 10 minutes later, and then both of them vanishing at 3:23 a.m. The footage is grainy because of the distance and lighting conditions, but it's definitely there. I've watched that video probably 50 times now, and I can't find any rational explanation for what happened. The car is clearly visible, and you can definitely make out the shape of a person sitting inside it. But there's no way anyone could have gotten up there without us seeing them. And there's certainly no way they could have just disappeared. I've been doing this job for 8 months now, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that Wonderland Springs is not just an abandoned amusement park. It's something else entirely. Whether you want to call it haunted, cursed, or just plain weird, there's definitely something going on here that defies explanation. The management company keeps extending my contract, and honestly, the pay is too good to walk away from. But every night when I clock in and grab my flashlight, I wonder if tonight's going to be the night something happens that I can't just file away as another strange experience. Maybe the spirits of all the joy and laughter that once filled this place are still here, trying to recapture what was lost. Or maybe when something brings that much happiness to that many people for that many years, it leaves an imprint that never really goes away. All I know is that when the sun goes down and I'm walking through those empty midways, I'm definitely not alone. And if you ever find yourself driving past an abandoned amusement park late at night and you hear the faint sound of carnival music drifting through the darkness, just keep driving. Trust me on that one. Some places are meant to stay in the past, no matter how much they don't want to let go.